My brother Seth was standing in my living room telling me I had 30 days to find alternative housing. He was not shouting. That is the part I want you to understand first, because when people imagine a scene like this, they imagine raised voices and slammed doors, and the kind of confrontation that announces itself clearly as a confrontation. Seth did not operate that way. He used the measured tone of a man who believed that the reasonableness of his delivery made the content of what he was saying reasonable. He spoke the way he always spoke when he had decided something, carefully, evenly, with the specific patience of someone who expects eventual agreement and is simply waiting for you to arrive at it. He referenced our late mother. He said she would have wanted the family to stay close. He said Pamela was 14 weeks pregnant, and they needed more space, and the Dunmore Street house made the most sense for everyone involved given the layout and the school district and the proximity. To his office, he said he understood this was a lot to absorb and that 30 days was generous, and he wanted to make sure I had enough time to find something comfortable. I was standing near the kitchen doorway with my coffee. I let him finish completely, every word, every reasonable, measured, carefully constructed word. Then I told him I would need to review a few things and get back to him by the end of the week. He left satisfied. I watched him from the front window as he walked to his car and called Pamela from the driveway. I could not hear the words, but I could see his posture, relaxed, resolved, the posture of a man who has delivered a difficult conversation and come through it well. He drove away. I finished my coffee. Then I went to my home office and opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet and pulled out a folder I had not looked at in 22 months because I had not needed to. Let me tell you about the house on Dunmore Street. Our mother Margaret died 3 years ago after 18 months of illness that I do not need to describe in detail, except to say that it was the kind of slow and expensive and relentless process that reorganizes your life around it, whether you plan for that reorganization or not. I was the one who managed it. Not because Seth was unwilling in any dramatic sense. He came when I asked him to come. He made decisions when I presented him with decisions that needed to be made. But the infrastructure of it, the medical coordination, the insurance disputes, the estate paperwork that began accumulating before my mother had finished dying, that was mine. It became mine the way things become mine, which is to say gradually and without announcement until the assumption was established and the pattern was set. Seth attended the funeral. He offered opinions about the estate distribution from a distance that was comfortable for him and less comfortable for me. He flew back to Sacramento 2 days after we buried our mother because Pamela had a work event and they had commitments they had not been able to reschedule. I stayed in Portland for another 6 weeks to close the estate. When it was done, I found myself without stable housing. My lease had ended during the months I spent managing my mother's affairs, and I had been living in her apartment on a month-to-month arrangement that was not going to be sustainable. I spent 8 months after the estate closed, saving with the specific focus of someone who understands exactly what financial stability requires, because she has spent her professional life underwriting mortgages and knows the structure of it from the inside. I am a mortgage underwriter. I have been doing it for 9 years. I understand what documentation means. I understand what a deed means. I understand what 22 consecutive monthly payments mean in the context of establishing clear ownership of a residential property. I understand these things the way I understand most things in my life, precisely and without exaggeration, and with very little need to announce my understanding to the people around me. I found the Dunmore Street property in late spring. A craftsman house, 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a kitchen that had been updated sometime in the previous decade without destroying the character of the original structure. I made an offer. I closed in July. I moved in on a Saturday with the help of 2 friends and a rented truck, and a sense of something I had not felt in approximately 2 years, that I was in a place that was mine in the complete and unqualified sense of that word. I told my family I had found a place. Nobody asked whose name was on the deed. Nobody asked whether I had purchased or rented. I did not offer the information because I had developed, over 34 years of being the competent one in a family that took competence for granted. A habit of handling things without making announcements about having handled them. It was not secrecy. It was the absence of a reason to specify. I see now that the absence of specification was the gap that Seth walked through. He had referred to the house as a nice rental at a family dinner 6 months before the living room conversation. He had asked if my landlord was reasonable. I had said the arrangement was working well and moved the conversation forward, and he had not pursued it. 4 months ago, he had mentioned to our father Raymond that the Dunmore Street house would be a good option for expanding the family footprint if the timing worked out. My father had apparently agreed that this was worth keeping in mind. I heard about that conversation from my aunt 3 weeks before Seth appeared in my living room. I filed it. I said nothing. I went back to my office on the Monday after Seth's visit and called my mortgage servicer and requested a complete account summary and payment history. I pulled the original closing documents from the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. I called a real estate attorney named Patricia Voss, who I had worked with professionally on 2 previous occasions, and I asked her one direct question. Given that the property at this address is titled solely in my name, with an active mortgage in my name and 22 months of payment history, what is the legal standing of a verbal demand from a family member that I vacate the premises within 30 days? Patricia's response was brief. She said the demand had no legal standing whatsoever. She said I could end the call there if I wanted to. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I set the folder on my kitchen table and I scheduled Saturday morning. The 6 days between Monday and Saturday were the part of this story that I have thought about most in the month since. On Tuesday, my father called. Seth had mentioned that I was thinking things over, and Raymond wanted me to know that family has to come together at times like this. He said Pamela's pregnancy was a significant moment for the Callahans, and that it would mean a lot if I could approach the situation with generosity. He said the house was sitting there, and I was just one person, and Pamela needed the space. He said this in the tone he used when he believed he was being reasonable and paternal simultaneously. I told him I was working through some things and that I would be in touch. On Wednesday, Seth called, and his tone had shifted in a way that was not dramatic, but was noticeable if you had been listening to Seth's tones your entire life. He mentioned that he had already spoken to a painter about the second bedroom. He said it in the way you mention a logistical detail, casually, as though the decision it implied had already been made, and the conversation we were having was simply a formality preceding its execution. I told him Saturday still worked. On Thursday, an aunt called. She had heard I was being difficult about the housing situation. She wanted me to know she understood it was hard to leave a place you had been comfortable in, but that family had to be the priority. She said our mother would have wanted us to support each other. I thanked her for calling. I did not sleep particularly well on Thursday night. Not from anxiety about the outcome, I knew the outcome, from something harder to name. The specific exhaustion of being the person that everyone calls to apply pressure to because they have decided, without asking, that their version of events is the accurate one, and that your resistance to it is the problem rather than their assumption. Friday, I worked a full day. I reviewed 4 loan files. I approved 2 and sent 1 back for additional documentation and flagged 1 for a supervisor review. I ate lunch at my desk. I drove home on the same route I had driven home for 22 months. I made dinner in my kitchen. I looked at the folder on the table. I went to bed at 10:30. Seth arrived at 9 on Saturday morning. I had made coffee. The folder was on the table. I had not moved it to a drawer or a shelf or anywhere that suggested I had prepared something. It was simply there. The way documents are simply there when they are part of the ordinary administration of a life. Seth came in and accepted the coffee and sat down at the table with the manner of a man who had prepared himself for either agreement or resistance and had decided he was ready for both. He was wearing the expression he wore in professional settings, composed, confident. The expression of someone who has thought through the conversation in advance and believes he has the stronger position. He restated his case. He walked through the reasoning again, the pregnancy, the school district, the space requirements, the family logic that made the Dunmore Street house the obvious solution to his current situation. He said he wanted to be fair about the transition timeline and that he was willing to extend the 30 days if I needed more time to find something. He said he had already started looking at paint colors for the nursery and that Pamela was very excited about the kitchen. I let him finish, every word. Then I opened the folder. I placed one document in front of him on the table. The mortgage account summary from my servicer, my name at the top, the Dunmore Street address below it, the original loan amount. The date of the first payment, 22 months ago, 3 months before Seth had asked me at a family dinner whether my landlord was reasonable. The payment history running in a clean, unbroken line across 22 consecutive months. The current outstanding balance, the projected payoff date. I placed it in front of him, and I did not say anything. Seth looked at the document. He read it with the attention of someone who is reading something that is dismantling a structure he built without realizing he was building it. I watched him reach the end of the page. I watched him start again from the top. He asked when I had bought it. I told him, 22 months ago, 8 months after the estate closed. Conventional mortgage, 30-year term, my down payment, my name on the deed, my name on every document in the closing package. He asked why I had never said anything. I looked at my brother across the table. I asked why he had never asked. The room held that question for a long time. Seth did not have an answer that he could give cleanly, and we both understood this simultaneously, and neither of us made it more dramatic than it was. He looked at the mortgage summary again. He looked at my name at the top of the page. He set it on the table carefully, the way you set something down when you are aware that you are handling something that belongs to someone else. He drank the rest of his coffee. He thanked me for Saturday. He left. I watched his car pull out of the driveway from the kitchen window. Then I washed the coffee cups and put them away and sat at the table for a while with the folder in front of me. My father called on Tuesday. This call was different from the Monday call 8 days earlier. His voice had the quality it had in conversations where he was recalibrating something. He asked how long I had owned the house. I told him. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said he had not known that, and I said I knew he hadn't, and he said he supposed nobody had thought to ask, and I said that was accurate. He asked if I was all right. I told him I was fine. I told him the house was fine. I told him I had work in the morning and I would call him later in the week. Seth did not call for 2 weeks. When he did, the conversation was short and functional. He asked about a cousin's birthday gathering that was coming up. I said I would be there. He said good. The 30-day demand was not mentioned. The painter was not mentioned. Pamela's excitement about my kitchen was not mentioned. We talked for 6 minutes and said goodbye, and I went back to the loan file I had been reviewing when the phone rang. I want to tell you something about what this experience clarified for me. Not about Seth specifically. About a pattern that I had been living inside for so long that I had stopped being able to see its shape clearly. Being the competent one in a family is not a neutral position. It looks like strength from the outside, and in many ways it is strength. I do not want to describe my own capabilities with false modesty. But there is a cost to it that does not appear on any document. The cost is that your competence becomes the background. It becomes the assumed condition against which other people's needs play out. You handle things so consistently and so quietly that the handling becomes invisible. And eventually the things you have handled, the decisions you have made, the resources you have built, the life you have constructed through years of careful and deliberate work, become available in other people's imaginations in a way that they would never be if you had announced them loudly. I bought a house, I paid for it. I have paid for it every month for 22 months without missing a payment, and without requiring anyone's assistance, and without asking for acknowledgement of any kind. And it became, in my brother's mind, available, not because he is a bad person, because I had never given him a clear signal that it was not. The mortgage statement was not a weapon. It was a document. It was 22 months of a fact that I had been living inside and he had never thought to ask about. When I placed it on the table, I was not punishing him. I was simply making the fact visible in the only format that had the clarity to do what a year of assumptions had not. I own this house. I have always owned this house. My name is on every page of every document that matters. And I am done managing the distance between what I have built and what the people around me have assumed I have built. There is something I want to ask you before we close. Have you ever owned something, a decision, a space, a piece of your life built through years of deliberate, quiet work, and found that the people around you had assigned it a different value than it actually had, simply because you had never made them look at the paperwork? If you have, you already know that the most powerful thing you can do is not argue with the assumption. It is to open the folder. If this story stayed with you, if you have ever been the competent one, the quiet one, the one who handles things without announcements, subscribe to Silent Verdict. Because every week we tell the stories of the people who open the folder, and every week the folder is enough.